guys, I'm Dr. Anna Uden. I'm a postdoctoral therapist and author of the book The Curse in Their Veins. Today I'm going to be doing a deep dive on some claims being spread by Christian content creators regarding Christian divorce and other outcome variables. Recently, I came across this video by Alana Arbucci where she says the following and she shows the following TikToks.
We can all learn something and take something away from the following.
50% of first marriages across the country end in divorce. But this is the stat that's going to blow some of your minds. Dr. John Gottman looks and he says the data shows that less than 1% of couples who pray together end in divorce. Less than 1%.
One out of 1,152 couples who pray together out loud on a consistent basis will get divorced. Wow. So well less than 1%.
99% of couples that pray together actually stay together. People go to church, 50% stay together. No different than the general population go to church or don't go to church, but the people who pray together stay together.
So I got really curious and I wanted to look at what the actual research had to say, what the direct sources of these claims were, and I ended up doing a deep dive. So you guys are in for a bit of a treat today because what this deep dive revealed, I could not have ever foreseen. So get cozy, get a cup of tea, and let me take you on a journey of how I discovered this. First things first, let me just clarify what my goals are with this video. Firstly, I want to correct misinformation. Secondly, I want to discuss what the research actually says about this topic, about couples that pray together. Third, I want to discuss some scientific literacy techniques to help all of you watching be better equipped for assessing the veracity of certain claims being made online, and just kind of theorize about why people could be making up these studies. Please do not go to the pages of these people and write rude things under their videos. That is a really lame thing to do. If you feel the urge to do that, go touch some grass instead. And this is actually not going to be a critique of Christian couples or couples praying together, as you'll see when we get to the research piece of this video. My issue is not with religiosity or with Christianity. My issue is with spreading misinformation and pseudoscience. Let's start with claim number 1, that less than 1% of couples that pray together end up divorcing, according to John Gottman. When I heard this, my ears immediately perked up. For those of you that don't know, John Gottman is arguably the most leading researcher on couple outcomes. He's pinpointed a couple's likelihood of divorcing with over 90% accuracy. Now look, I have not read every single article published by John Gottman. He's a very prolific researcher, but I have read a good amount of his research in my doctoral program, been certified in the Gottman Couples Therapy Level 1 certification, made countless videos discussing the research of John Gottman, and dug through the internet and research databases for any sort of link between Gottman and prayer. And I have not once come across a finding that suggests John Gottman made this claim. I even bought 2 of his books after this to see if there was anything I could find on this. So when I heard this already, alarm bells were going off in my head because, first of all, John Gottman loves catchy numbers. He loves to talk about predicting couple divorce with over 90% accuracy, the 4-to-1 golden ratio, the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. So I thought, okay, if this less than 1% statistic exists, I feel like I would have heard Gottman talk about it by now. The math was not mathing. The closest thing I could find linking Gottman and prayer was a medium.com article, which also mentions this 1 in 1,500 statistic, but their only reference is an article by Ellison, Burdett, and Wilcox from 2010, which is indeed a scientific article, but it's a survey of 2,400 adults, not 1,500 couples. And it's also not a longitudinal study that tracks divorce across time. It actually has nothing to do with divorce at all. It doesn't measure divorce whatsoever. It's a study that found in-home devotional activities such as prayer and shared religious beliefs were positively linked to self-reported relationship quality. In other words, yes, praying together was associated with better relationship satisfaction, and we'll get more to the research in a moment. But this study makes absolutely no claim about prayer being able to predict divorce. And again, Gottman has nothing to do with the study. There was only one other thing that I found that somewhat connected Gottman and prayer, and this was an article on a website called Doing Family Right, which, as you can imagine, is also a Christian website. On this website, the author cites Gottman to say that couples with shared faith enjoy longer, more satisfying marriage, and in the next sentence, the author says, of couples that pray together daily, less than 1% of them have a chance of ever experiencing divorce. But the citation for this claim is not Gottman. The citation is something called the Gallup poll by the National Association of Marriage Enhancement 1997. If this is the only possible link that I could find between Gottman and the 1% claim, I can't help but think that somebody miscited him for a claim he didn't make. Maybe somebody came across this article, saw Gottman cited in the sentence before that, and used that as a reference for the following claim made. If I'm wrong and you know about some sort of statistic that Gottman found regarding couples that pray together and this 1% statistic that's going around, please do let me know. Like I said, I cannot possibly go through every single study that Gottman has done. All I know is that I dug deep and I really couldn't find anything. But at this point I thought, okay, what is this 1997 Gallup poll that's being cited in the next sentence? Because that is the closest thing to a source that I could find for the 1% claim. I Googled everything that I could about this 1997 Gallup poll, and I found countless Christian blogs citing this Gallup poll as a direct source, like Build Your Marriage, Guidelines.org, and Compass Connection Center. No matter how many blog posts cite the 1997 Gallup poll, I couldn't actually find the study. So I looked at Gallup independently. Gallup, from what I can tell, is an organization that makes polls to get statistics on various attitudes in the US. I thought, how in the world would they determine who divorced and who didn't with a simple one-time poll that, again, is not longitudinally tracking divorce outcomes? That's not what this company seems to do at all. Tried to find this poll on their website. I couldn't find anything. I even looked up National Association of Marriage Enhancement 1997 on their website. The study did not show up. So I went to the National Association of Marriage Enhancement, or NAME's website. This one is called nameonline.org, which appears to be a Christian organization. I looked up Gallup poll 1997 on their website, and yet again, nothing was to be found. So I emailed NAME directly, and they replied to me and told me to contact Gallup. So I emailed Gallup, and Gallup told me they can locate no such poll and to contact NAME instead. At this point, I have to assume that this 1997 Gallup poll done in conjunction with NAME does not exist. And I have to wonder, who would make up such a claim and why? But even putting aside the fact that Gallup polls are not tracking divorce longitudinally, no one seems to be able to find the study, even the organizations that supposedly did the study. If this poll did truly exist, correlation does not equal causation. So just because less than 1% of couples that pray together stay together, that doesn't mean it's because of the prayer. In fact, if I were to venture a guess, there would probably be a third variable at play there, such as couple unity, or couples that are very Christian that pray together not having favorable attitudes towards divorce. But again, I have zero evidence that this poll actually exists. There are some other claims in the Alana Arbucci video that I'd like to fact check real quick.
Did you know that godly Christian men, committed Christian men, not lukewarm, not nominal Christian men, but committed Christian men produce the most happy and fruitful marriages? They get divorced less than any other demographic, and their wives testify to being happier and more satisfied in their marriage than any other demographic.
So my goal for this video is to make sense of these statistics and understand why these things are true. So what we learned from Wilcox's study is that our statistics about Christian men have been incredibly skewed. That's because most of the statistics have included nominal Christian men. So this means Christian men who are just Christian by name. Although the studies have shown that nominal Christian men really do fit the negative stereotypes, men just identifying as Christian and not being like fully all in Bible believing committed Christian men, they do fit the stereotype of like every other guy. But the statistics about actively involved Christian men shatter the toxic masculinity narrative and are incredibly encouraging. So here's a brief summary of the highlights of Wilcox's research about actively involved Christian men. Actively involved Christian men are the least likely to divorce and the least likely to cheat on their wives. Actively involved Christian men have the happiest wives in America. These wives report higher levels of quality couple time and more likely to feel appreciated for their work in the home and outside the home, and report having greater sexual satisfaction.
So the references in the description box of Alana's video are blog posts written by Christian organizations, which, in case I have to say it, is not a valid source of such claims. You have to go to the actual source. Her first link is from the Crossing Church. In this Christian blog post article, the author discusses a book by Nancy Pearcey called The Toxic War on Masculinity, Sounds really unbiased. And in that book, Piercy cites some research by Brad Wilcox. And guess what? Brad Wilcox is a writer for the Institute for Family Services, and that is actually Alana's second reference in her description box. We'll get to that in a moment. So I tried to find a list of Brad Wilcox's research to see exactly what Piercy was referencing of his research, but unfortunately I had trouble finding it. His CV on UVA's page shows an error when you click on it. The only articles of his that I could locate on scientific databases are not direct studies, but rather opinion pieces that cite other people's research. But basically, in this Crossing Church blog post, the author cites a book that cites a researcher named Brad Wilcox that, as far as I can tell, is citing other people's research in his articles, making it virtually impossible to fact-check those claims. I would need to buy Piercy's book, see where she cites Brad Wilcox, find Brad Wilcox's research, and then go straight to it, which frankly is a little bit far down this rabbit hole even for me. Now, the second link that Alana cites is the Institute for Family Services, which is, like I said, where Brad Wilcox is a writer. And this article discusses the benefits of prayer for Christian couples and is written by the person who actually wrote the research articles being cited. Now, as far as I can tell, these are legitimate scientific articles that show the ways in which praying together can be beneficial for couples. But I see nothing in the blog post article or the scientific articles themselves saying that the wives of Christian men are the happiest of any group, anything comparing true Christians to nominal Christians, nor does this article make the 1% claim, by the way. Alana's third reference is the Roy's report, and here we are starting to get at the source of the claim that only a tiny percentage of Christians actually believe the Bible is accurate, that only a tiny percent of Christians are actually true biblical Christians rather than nominal Christians. The blog post cites a study by the Center for Biblical Worldview, which is obviously another Christian organization, that did a national survey. And that study also references a different study that made a claim that only 6% of Christians are real Christians. That study is done by the Cultural Research Center at Arizona State University, and that is Alana's fourth reference. Now, do you want to know how these two studies determined what percentage of Christians are real Christians? To be a true believer, you need to believe that the Bible is completely devoid of any factual or historical errors, that the best indicator for success in life is consistent obedience to God, that human beings are born with a sinful nature and can only be saved by Jesus Christ, that people can only go to heaven if they have confessed their sins and accepted Jesus, that people are not basically good, that Christianity is of greater value than other religious faiths, that being a good person is not enough to get you into heaven, that what faith you have is not more important than simply having a faith, and more like that. I can't believe I missed this. Also, it includes questions such as marriage should be between one man and one woman, premarital sex is not okay, and abortions are not okay. So let me be clear. That is not a valid questionnaire. Its reliability and validity have not been assessed. Its operationalization of what is a real Christian is completely biased and subjective. You cannot determine what a real Christian is through a test. A person's faith is incredibly personal, culturally dependent, and subjective. It depends on which parts of the Bible a person chooses to believe and which parts they explain in a different way. These questionnaires are extremely ethnocentric. They're basically saying, my interpretation of Christianity and the Bible is the only correct interpretation, and anyone who disagrees with me is not a real Christian. The only way I could have expected that maybe they figured out who was a real Christian was based on things like if they participate in religious community regularly, if they take part in spiritual self-care regularly, if they consider their spirituality in day-to-day life. Not this. The only thing these studies actually measure is how much a person agrees with their specific interpretation of Christianity. And I gotta tell you, I know a whole lot of Christians who would claim that this particular interpretation of Christianity, not so Christian in and of itself. I'll leave it to those people to cite what the Bible says about judging people. Because religion is a matter of meaning making. It cannot be operationalized. It's only taking people at their word that they truly believe something in their core and that they're making sense of it in whatever subjective lens makes sense to them. Religious texts are very long and archaic and do contradict themselves in certain parts, so it's really just a matter of taking what works for you and leaving what doesn't. And I don't care if you use scientific terminology like randomized sampling to make it sound like you belong in a scientific journal. This is not a legitimately valid study. The 6% finding is therefore not something we should be propagating on the internet. That would be like, I don't know if any of you followed me back when I talked about my dissertation findings, but I did my study on college women in hookup culture. And I wanted to look at their experiences of empowerment versus disempowerment. Now, the way that I did my study was I spoke to these women and I asked them, them about their experiences in hookup culture, about their experiences of empowerment and disempowerment. I had no idea that I could literally just give them a questionnaire and ask them, so, do you sleep around? How many men do you slut it up with? How often do your partners fucking chuck you? And that would have been a valid questionnaire to assess empowerment. Empowerment is a personal construct that is best defined by the participant themselves, just like religiosity. All right. That's enough misinformation for one day. Let's get to what the actual peer-reviewed research has to say on this topic. A study from 2020 found a slight positive correlation between marital satisfaction and religious faith in Christian couples alone, but in the lit review, they embedded the study within the pre-existing research on the topic. So they talked about how marital satisfaction and religion have been positively linked across all religions. Why is this? Well, there are different theories among the research. A big one is that shared meaning making is huge for couple outcomes. Actually, a main component of Gottman therapy is finding meaning together, unifying yourself as a dyad so that you can go through life kind of on the same page, looking at things through the same lens. Also, couples that spend quality time together during rituals, holidays, religious celebrations, that's obviously going to bring them together too. Couples with the same religious beliefs, or really any kind of same beliefs, get along better. It's not true that opposites attract, because we don't want our views contradicted. We want to be with someone who basically sees the world in a similar way to us. Also, a lot of religions promote forgiveness, which can be really helpful in a relationship. And a lot of religions place an emphasis on viewing the well-being of yourself and your partner as a dyad, not just your own selfish needs and desires. The act of prayer itself has also been associated with more positive outcomes. So this is where Alana is absolutely right. The 1% claim, not true. The nominal Christians claim, not true. But the act of prayer does help relationships. It decreases criticism, increases feelings of goodwill towards your partner, and again, increases shared meaning making if you're doing it together. This article from 2010 showed that prayer for the partner predicted lower levels of extradyadic romantic behavior over 6 weeks, meaning there was a correlation between praying for one's partner and lower infidelity. They also did an experiment in the same article, meaning not only is prayer correlated with lower infidelity, but causality can even be inferred, at least for the period of 4 weeks. And third-party observers also see it, because objective observers rated the 4-week prayer partners as more committed. Another study from 2012 found that praying for your partner predicted objective ratings of trust, which was mediated or explained by greater couple unity. Meaning people who pray together do experience more unity as a whole and therefore greater trust. It's not just about the act of praying, but rather it comes about through the unity. An article from 2014 showed that partner-focused petitionary prayer was correlated with later commitment level in a college sample, which again was mediated or explained partially by enhanced relationship satisfaction. So again, praying for your partner was shown to be helpful for later commitment, partially explained by the fact that there was greater relationship satisfaction. And an article from 2008 suggests a way to incorporate prayer into couples interventions. But an interesting piece in this article was they also warned caution. They explained that couple egalitarianism is ultimately the biggest predictor of couple satisfaction. So any kind of prayer being used to reinforce gendered power disparities has huge potential for harm, which, a lot of Christian content creators do talk about how the man has to lead and the woman has to submit. That is actually against the research in terms of what's going to make the couple happier. The authors say, lest it appear otherwise, we wish to state explicitly that prayer may also have the potential to harm relationships. So saying with a broad stroke that everybody should pray with their partner could be harmful. They even mention the aphorism, the couple that prays together stays together. And they say, we believe that consideration of prayer or any other spiritual activity in marital interventions requires far more careful consideration and sensitivity than has been shown in this aphorism. For example, on the negative side, it's easy to imagine a joint couple prayer being used by one partner as a tool to manipulate the other. Concerns such as these are reminders of the potential danger of oversimplifying the link between prayer and positive couple outcomes. Our analysis in no way provides the foundation for or supports the use of spiritual activities and marital interventions as a means of proselytizing clients. In other words, if you are telling people to pray together that it'll strengthen their relationship as a way to preach about your religion, even the researchers showing this positive effect of prayer warn against that. While I will say that most of the research on this topic shows that couple prayer is a positive thing, there is some research that suggests the opposite, which is to be expected in any type of research. For example, in the study from 2013, greater relationship satisfaction was associated with greater egalitarianism. Egalitarianism was associated with lower religiosity, and there was a negative weak correlation between religiosity and relationship satisfaction. Meaning, if your religious belief puts one partner above the other, then your marriage probably won't be super happy. And because a lot of religious people in their study did this, there was a weak correlation between religious beliefs and unhappy marriage. But still, if there's all this body of research to suggest the positive benefits of religious activities together, why would people need to make up statistics? On a sociological level, institutions that have power or financial things to gain from perpetuating a specific ideology will want to market their ideology in the most catchy way, the way that's going to get as many people supporting their ideology as possible. They need to cite statistics that sound larger than life so that people will feel like, well, I have to believe this because it sounds so incredible. And on a psychological level, human beings don't like having their beliefs questioned. Cognitive dissonance brings up a lot of shame and shatters our self-identity. So we jump at the opportunity to have our beliefs confirmed, even before checking if the facts support what we claim they do. I've been guilty of this too. Honestly, we all have. This is something we all have to be mindful of. And also, I think we have to talk about how sometimes when people feel insecure about their decisions or their lifestyle, they need constant affirmation from people. A person who feels secure in their religious identity doesn't need to constantly proselytize to others. An insecure person is going to try to position their identity as superior to other people's position because deep down they feel inadequate. They're trying to overcompensate for their insecurity. And lastly, there's something called reaction formation, which is a defense mechanism where you're expressing the very opposite of what you're feeling. So for instance, people who do not want to accept themselves for being gay, for instance, will often go really hard on homophobia. That's an example of reaction formation. You're expressing the opposite of what you actually know deep down is true about you. Let me leave you with some quick scientific literacy tips so that you don't fall under pseudoscience like this. If a claim sounds too good to be true, go straight to the source. Blog posts are not a source. I sometimes cite blog posts in the description box of my videos so that you all can better grasp the research, but I always go straight to the sources directly. And within those sources, I look at the lit review, which embeds their specific study between the overarching literature. So if your BS meter is going off, go to the blog post. The blog post has a reference list, go to the reference list, and make sure the reference is actually a scientific study that says what the blog post says it does. Also be mindful of who's funding these studies. Do they have any bias, anything to gain from a specific perspective being told? Is there a conflict of interest? Bias interfering with the ability to uphold scientific standards? Are these studies peer-reviewed? I don't think that an organization where everyone holds the same belief, whether it be a Christian organization, a woke organization, any of that, I don't think they have huge chances of getting at the real truth. And the reason for that is groupthink. If everyone agrees with the same worldview, same ideology, they're going to want to confirm certain beliefs and they're going to get sloppy. It's important to have a diverse array of scientists. Otherwise, if an entire organization has the same specific set of beliefs, you're really putting it at risk of getting further from the truth. It's also really important to just use critical thinking. I've actually gotten very good at identifying when somebody's lying to me. And how? It has nothing to do with body language, actually. It has to do with attentiveness to detail, noticing patterns, noticing stuff that's not adding up, and embedding what they're saying to me within the context of what I already know to be true. For example, the claim that Gottman found less than 1% of couples who pray together stay together did not add up with what I knew about Gottman's research, so I looked into it. Or the fact that they cited something called the Gallup organization for something that would take longitudinal research to study, but the Gallup organization seemingly only does one-time polls. Think about stuff like that doesn't add up and doesn't make sense in the context of what you already know. So think critically and ask yourself, does this make sense in the context of everything else going on? Lastly, I think it's really important to set out with the intention of finding out the truth, not necessarily with finding out what's going to confirm our beliefs. So for instance, when I went down this deep dive, when I dug myself down a rabbit hole, I didn't know what I was going to find. I was fully prepared to find a study that confirmed what Alana said it did. It's the reason why I shared a lot of research with you that actually promoted the use of prayer in couples. Because I didn't go into this with the mindset of, oh, I'm going to debunk this claim. I went into it with the idea of, I'm going to find out where the truth is. Problem with so many people that perpetuate misinformation in this day and age is that they want to believe these studies, that in some cases don't even exist, more than they actually want to determine whether the studies are valid or whether they even exist. So be skeptical. And even if you get excited because you hear, oh, I found a study that sounds like it confirms my worldview, seek the truth of the matter with an open mind, knowing fully well that what you might find could actually contradict your beliefs. Making this video literally broke my brain. I had to go so deep down a rabbit hole, so if you enjoyed it, I'm really glad that you did. If there's anything you want to give back for me breaking my brain for this video, give this video a thumbs up, share it with your friends, comment down below what you thought of it, and I'll see you soon.